trying to run.
Also, Democrats. And we got a jerk in the office. Fucking egomaniac that's just crazy.
In the presidential election, it had 93 people in this caucus.
Really?
Well, he lives out in eastern El Paso County.
Right.
93 people were home.
The whole population?
Oh, I'm serious. And last night, we had 7. And
All right, gang, let's call this august group of people together here. So I call the meeting to order. Thank everybody for being here. So we have a quorum, so all alternates can vote. So we'll go. So let me start off by reading a purpose statement. The purpose statement for the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure the capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters during November 2nd, 2004 and November 6, 2012 elections are accomplished with PPRTA fund. This committee reports directly to the Board of Directors. Do not lift with your left hand. Okay. Before we get on to the agenda, I would like to, as some of you may be aware, we have the new Executive Director for the PPACG, Mr. Andy Gunning here. Sir, would you like to make a couple of comments?
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good to be here, everybody. Thank you for all the good work that you all are doing. I'm now my 3rd week on the job, and Rick is super happy about that. I'm really excited to be here, and excited to be back doing regional work, similar work that you all are doing. I came here by way of Rockville, Maryland, which is in the Washington, D.C. area. Thank you for the thumbs up there as a planning director, acting planning director, and did some other things when I was back there. But before I went to Rockville, I was in Tucson, Arizona for about 16 years, and about 12 of those years I worked for an agency very similar to PPACG and PPRTA. I was there when we were the Council of Governments and also formed a regional transportation authority in the Tucson area as well. So I missed that work, so I'm really glad to be back here and work with you all and all the good stuff that you guys are doing and throughout the whole agency and the region. So keep up the good work. Any questions for me before you guys dive back in?
Anybody?
Okay.
Welcome aboard.
All right.
Yeah, welcome to
Glad
Colorado.
be here.
Welcome to Colorado Springs.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Don't never want to leave.
Yeah.
Winter will get here sooner or later. Yeah. So it may be one heck of a late March, early April, but it'll eventually get here.
Well,
Although
Easter's
I'm
April
sure that
Fool's.
there's some people in the audience that just as soon it not show up very heavy. So, all right. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. So moved. Tony. Second. David. Is that right?
Larry.
Oh, Larry. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Anyone with public comment items that aren't on the agenda? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes from the February 7th meeting. Larry, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'd like to propose a change to the minutes under item number 3. In place of fallen sheriff's deputy, I'd like to propose that we put in there El Paso County Sheriff's Detective Micah Flick.
Second.
So we have a motion to clarify the fallen deputy with some specific words. Is there any, and a second, is there any discussion on that? All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any other comments? Motion carries. Any other comments on the agenda? Seeing none, for the minutes, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
So move. And second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Financial, Ms. Bev. Miss Mediocre Bev.
Okay, good afternoon. On page 1 for December, sales and use tax that we received right before the board meeting, it was $9,138,000, so it was $470 below the monthly budget, and that made us $906,000 below the annual budget of $100 million. So, not real great news. On page 2, compared to last year, though, we were ahead of budget by $44,000 for the month and $4.5 million for the year. Now, the rest of the reports are the normal ones you get every month with comparing the project's cost to date to the budgets. So the page that I handed out that was in front of you compares, and it says page 1 for the 2018 budget amendment, and it looks like this, in case. Okay. So the gross sales and use tax are $906 below budget, and the cost to collect, we saved $71,000. And interest earnings were $989 above budget, and that's because we changed financial institutions and the interest rates went up this last year finally. So we saved $104,000 on administrative and ballot measure expense compared to budget. So the net for the 2018 budget amendment is $258,000. So basically a break even. I mean, when you consider how much our budget is. And then the allocations are below that line. So there's not very much difference between the actual 2017 and the as far as total revenues or net revenues. So are there any questions about that?
Bev, it was brought up at the board meeting, but do you want to maybe just let folks know the impact or the potential impact of coming in under budget and on the revenue side?
Well, for the 2018 budget amendment, this is like a net zero practically. But it means that we won't have additional revenue, which we sometimes have, to allocate to projects that might be going over budget already. I mean, when we did the budget, started the budget, it was last September. So we have that. But another impact is we have $100 million in sales and use tax revenue for 2018. And it'll be up to the CAC and the board as to whether we want to reduce that in the 2018 budget. I don't have January's numbers yet, so it's a little premature to assume that we will need to reduce it, or if we even need to at all, because if you reduce it, then the current budgeted projects will take a hit. We'll have to slow down the production or the building of those projects. But the thing is that we have a pretty big cash reserve, so I don't think there's any real need to do that. But but one of the things is that, as you might recall, we have the I-25 gap, and anything over budget 55% of that, the capital percentage, would go towards that project, up to $5 million for the next 2 years. And that could, this sales and use tax slowdown could have a big impact on that.
Tony?
I noticed that, I mean, the actual numbers for 2017 were actually still $4.5 million or so above 2016.
Right.
So it's still an increase of, what is that, 4.7, 4.8% over the year
Right.
over year. And maybe I missed this in the previous conversations. How did we come to our projection, our budget of $100 million, when that's such a large jump in the first place?
Right.
You know, up $4.5 million year over year seems pretty good to me.
Okay, so we had 2 budget amendments this last year. And the first one was to take into account the difference in 2016 revenue compared to budget. And once we got those figures, we did that amendment. Then we did another amendment to increase the sales and use tax budget because it was really going wild. So on page 2, let's look at January, February. January was 209, February was 916 above actual, March 687, April 816, May 821. Okay, that's when we did the budget amendment. So we were just killing it. Right, and then it just drops off, except for July, which was really high. But you can see at the end of the year, it just really drops off. So at that point, with the information we had, we thought that we would make the $100 million easily.
And in that list, August and September are still the only 2 months that fell behind 2016, right? And that's because of those car sales.
Right.
So every other month was still above previous year. So.
And so most of you might recall this, that the reason we were behind last year towards the end of the year is the hail damage to vehicles and people getting their vehicles totaled and buying a bunch of new vehicles. So in the prior year, so in 2016. So 2017 looked bad because 2016 was so good at the end of the year.
So the money that would go to I-25 would be revenue we collect over our budget. So if it had been this last year, we wouldn't have had any revenue over budget to contribute. And
Correct.
Would be in danger of that again this next year.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's one of the big impacts. So,
And I just wanted to make sure for some of the newer members is that in terms of impact to the member governments and their project lists for their budgets, it would just mean that they wouldn't have that extra income and they may have to slide a project from 2018 to 2019 or something like that. So it's not like we're canceling anything. It's just it adjusts. They'll have to adjust their timing of what they had in their budget to account for that. So some people were through and we have to cancel a project. So that's just may affect the timing of something. Okay. Any other questions for Beth? Thank you, Beth.
okay, thank you.
Item number 6, 2018 Capital Maintenance and Public Transportation Contract, City, Colorado Springs.
Good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. Earlier, Rick passed out a change order that we're adding to the list as a walk-on. I apologize. I lost that one in the emails when Park and Rec sent it over to me. But basically, we have 3 items. The first item is a contract for Trax Construction for dig out and patching for this maintenance division. And in the memo, they had the unit prices for the two submitting companies. One of them was pretty high, so they just awarded a contract for Trax, and they're not planning on exceeding more than $300,000 expenditure on that one. The next one is construction contract for Even Pricer to do the Dublin Whiting over there by Bridle Pass to Powers, that little bottleneck that's been a bane for many years. We're going to start in April, and we're hoping to finish, let me see, I think in, what was that? It'll take about 6 months, I believe, is what we're looking at doing. Yeah, October. Hope to finish that in October. And then the last one is a change order for Blue Ridge for the Greenwheel, Pikes Peak Greenwheel Trail under Uinta. They're doing an underpass connection there. And this is basically a projected cost overrun for gabion walls. So they just wanted to bring that for approval beforehand because that's an overrun that they are estimating right now. They actually haven't done the work yet.
So on that, the projected overrun is the 38.4?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for the city or Mike on any of their contracts? Cheryl?
Like on the, it says on the back side, the financial information, it says funds available, free and free, and then it says 2017 budget amount, empty.
Yes, so there was actually no budget allocated for the Pikes Peak Corridor Greenway project. That money was in 15 and 16 is where all that money was allocated. So there's funds there they've rolled over, but actually budgeted, we didn't have anything in 17.
Rick? Reb, sorry.
I move approval.
Oh, you have a question? All right. We have a second. We'll have further discussion. Do we have a second of approval? Carlos?
Yeah, this is just a question. This actually had to do with the Martin Marietta and the TRAX competitive bid.
Yes.
Those bids for TRAX, it's about half of Martin Marietta. That seems, just want to know if there was an explanation for that.
I'll let Corey speak on that one.
Hi, Corey Farkas, Operations and Maintenance. Really difficult to say. A lot of times when we get contractors that get multiple contracts, it's a small contract for dig out and patch in front of our chip seal operation. So we go in, we mark the road where there might be some potential structural deficiencies where it's alligator cracked. And we'll do a dig out, repair that before the chip seal goes over top of it. Martin Marietta has a 2C contract for paving. They also have quite a bit of other paving going on. This particular program pulls one of their crews away from paving and doing mainline paving. So if I had to assume why their pricing was so high, I would assume because they really don't want to do it. However, if we were willing to pay that price, they would probably come in and do it for that price. Something that we see typically with contractors, and it's why we get multiple bids on these things. Now, TRAX came in much lower, so obviously they have some concrete work going on, but their patch crews might not be as busy, so they were able to do the work.
Any further?
So just to clarify, so you believe that Martin Marietta, that they were just over that, and TRAX was not just they're not underbidding this, because there is a significant variation between these two bids, and I just wanted clarification on that.
So historically, I've been with the city about 25 years and worked with a lot of these TRAX and others, and it doesn't surprise me that TRAX came in at that number. They obviously aren't going to be losing money, but they're a smaller company, probably don't have the overhead. So they can do that work and make some money at those prices. That's what they bid. And like Corey said, Martin Marietta probably thought, for a certain amount of money, it's worth pulling a crew off, but for numbers like TRAX, they're not going to do it. So I think it's typical. We see this, high and low numbers quite often.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of the city contracts and a second. Any further discussion on the item? Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
El Paso County contracts. Ms. Jennifer, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. Jim, just a suggestion. It might be good for us to discuss item 6B and the last three items of item 6C. Yeah, 6C altogether, because they all relate to Colorado Avenue, and just from an overall standpoint, if we could do that, that probably would make much more sense. As
6C
you-
is the list of change orders and
Or-
stuffs, I
Sorry.
mean, excuse me,
6B together
Yeah.
with 6C.
and then, yeah, the 6C is this list, right?
Yes,
Right,
so
so-
essentially, I'm asking to kind of talk about the project line item transfer for West Colorado Avenue altogether with the related contract amendments and items for West Colorado Avenue. I think
Go
it
for
makes
it.
sense.
Yep.
Can I ask clarification? Jennifer, because you're combining 6B and 6C, I haven't read it completely, okay? Should we call this an amendment to the agenda and make it 6D, or no, Rick's shaking his head?
No, the chair made a call.
Oh, all right. What do we call it then?
Well, I think my suggestion is that you probably still vote on them at the same, but it probably makes sense for you to hear it all together and from a contextual standpoint, it probably helps.
We'll vote on them separately, but we'll discuss them in one discussion. Is that okay with everybody? Okay.
And I'm going to start off here and then hand it off to Dennis Barron, who's my capable project manager, to talk a little bit. But I just wanted to talk a little bit and kind of introduce this item. As we came before you in December, I think November or December of 2016, we really were trying to move the West Colorado Avenue project along. And as a result of that, we went out to bid with a 90% set of plans, recognizing that we may be here today. So it's not a surprise that we're here today, and so I just wanted to start out with that understanding. Secondly, the other thing is we are requesting a line item transfer, and we're using a county project to fund those transfers and advance some of that money. But in your memo here, it talks about some future reallocation of budgets from the city of Manitou Springs and the city of Colorado Springs to essentially pay that back. And so what I wanted to mention here is that we've met with both those entities. We are still working with the city of Colorado Springs on the years of the payback. So if you approve the line item transfer, what I just want to say is that recognize that between the CAC and the board, we're still talking with the city of Colorado Springs on those years. I don't think that really changes the approval or not, but we're still working that out. And whether it's 3 years or 2 years, I think that we recognize that the intent is there, and we'll finalize that with the city. So I just haven't.
We know where they work.
Yeah, we do. So I wanted to mention that because the memo is pretty definitive. And in my discussions with Travis Easton, the Public Works Director, we're still working that out. But I think the intent is there, and he recognizes that. So with that, I'll go ahead and bring Dennis up. And I just want to say this project is probably one of the most complex and difficult projects that we have on this portion. And Dennis is doing a great job of heading it up. And as we stand here, we're standing here as El Paso County, but really we're standing here as the project sponsor because this project is truly a multi-jurisdictional project. And our partners from the city and of Colorado Springs and City of Manitou Springs have really done a great job in supporting the project. So. Thank you.
Based on the work Dennis did on Mark Shuffle South, I guess you got a bigger and better one, right? See, that's what you get. That's what you get for showing off and doing a good job. You get more work, right?
Dennis Barron, El Paso County, and as Jen mentioned, I'm the project manager for El Paso County on the West Colorado Avenue project, working with Mike and Shelley from the city and City of Manitou Springs. So we have a very collaborative effort, but I have a couple items here for you. As Jen mentioned, we went out with nominally 90%
Would you
drawings.
make sure your mic is on that little
Oh,
blue button? Is it on?
it's on. Maybe I just need to speak, to talk closer. We went out with nominally 90% drawings in a lot of the areas within the set of like 500 drawings. There were some areas that were probably less developed than 90%, but we called it 90%. We estimated quantities and asked the contractor to bid on those prices. The Wildcat was selected. I think he was low bidder by a little over $1 million. So we saved $1 million going to Wildcat Construction to do that, and they've been a good contractor on the job. So essentially, we're 1 year into the job now. We had 2017, a lot of construction going on, a lot of infrastructure. We took a look at what still needed to be done, things that we had not included in the construction contract when it went out to bid. The FHU team finalized design as we were going along, addressed a lot of the change conditions that we encountered along the way, and dealt with a lot of unknowns and RFIs from the contractor to build what they had planned to design. So we have a better handle on where we think the project is from a dollar perspective, and we did our best to take a look at the funding we had and where we were short, and tried to identify the needs. And I outlined the funding in the budget memo, and we're asking for an increase in the project budget of $3.88 million. Coincidentally, that's probably the amount of funds that's in the reserves. I had worked that number, but we worked with Beverly, and we decided to do it with the line item transfer. I didn't go back and revisit the number, but the number we had developed at that time became the number we were going to add to the project budget. So working with the city and City of Colorado Springs, City of Manitou Springs, they asked if the county could basically front their share of the money by using a line item transfer from one of our projects. So that's what we elected to do. We transferred, or we're requesting transfer of $3.88 million from our Mesa Ridge Parkway project, which has money budgeted through 2018, but has not yet been started, and I think will come along later in the program because it's there was a developer-related project that just got completed, so the need for spending more money on it immediately does not exist, and we'll take a look and see whether that project can be scaled back in the future, or but we don't need to spend those monies now, so they became available. We're requesting to shift it over. So I outlined basically the anticipated costs of what we know. There's a contract amendment which I'm presenting today for additional design and construction support services for FHU, $1.3 million. That also includes property acquisition and the surveying associated with the property acquisition activities, some of their sub-consultants. We have a lot of historic requirements that we have to do, which we had not been fully defined with the Corps when we went out to bid. We have to do some exhibits there. We've had a very active public participation program, and the cost of doing that and the constant communications with the people we're impacting has driven that cost up. So the people that are doing that work are subs to FHU. So part of it's for FHU, part of it's for the subs. And the property acquisition on this project is very complex. It's we're buying property in 3 municipalities. So we're dealing with buying it under 3 different sets of guidelines, one for the city, one for the City of Manitou Springs, and one for El Paso County. There's over 100 parcels that we need to buy properties from. We had not purchased, I think we had purchased 1 property, the Sunflower Motel, before we started, so we were doing property acquisition as we were constructing, trying to work around in areas that were available without having the property we needed to do things. So it's become it was a very complex project. We provided the contractor dates as to when things are going to be available. Most of those dates we were unable to achieve, so he's worked with us, but we are continuing to pursue the property acquisition, and we're hopeful that we can complete that in the next 3 to 4 months, at least getting all the offers signed off by the property owners. So there's a lot of property acquisition there. The other major contributors to this are additional construction things that we need to do. We added a water quality pond to satisfy the city's MS4 permit. As I mentioned, we have historic exhibits and elements that need to be prepared. We have the, let me think, as I said, we had 80 to 90% contract drawing, so that design was finalized. We've issued several additional drawings for release for construction, and we've gone back and updated all the quantities, and some of the change orders that I'm proposing for the Wildcat Amendment reflect new items that we had to add, as well as increases in and decreases in the quantities that we estimated at the time of bid. So that's the overview. Probably talked too much about the details, but if anybody has any questions on the budget memo, I'd be happy to answer them at this point.
Anybody have any questions? Cheryl?
Carol?
Yeah, I'm on. The allowance for the trail construction between Ridge and Columbia, has the alignment now been finalized?
The trail alignment has not been. We had a conceptual trail alignment to connect from Ridge to the trail that goes under the bridge. It ran through CDOT property conceptually. There was a parallel project that the city was doing with a grant from CDOT that nominally was going to purchase the property adjacent to the CDOT property parallel to, between 24 and West Colorado Avenue. And the plan was when the city bought that, we were going to shift the trail over to that property. Well, that project did not proceed as quickly. The funding and the agreements between the city and CDOT did not proceed in the timeline that we had originally anticipated. So, and I think it is proceeding now, but it will be done probably after our project's done our construction there. So the original plan, to answer your question, so we were originally going to be on CDOT property. We were going to move the trail to along the creek and the Timber Lodge property once the CDOT purchased that, or the city purchased that and demolished the buildings. We don't have that right now. So we're working with CDOT to see whether they will allow us to put a trail on their right-of-way adjacent to 24. We'll have to enter into an IGA with that. That would probably be the easiest and the quickest way to accomplish that until the city does the project on the Timber Lodge, at which time a more permanent trail connection could be made.
The city's project on Timber Lodge, is that the park and ride?
No, this is, it's for a water quality pond, I believe. Right, but it's just, I think they've just reached the agreement, so they probably have to do an environmental assessment, and then there's property acquisition, and then, so it's not going to fit with the timeline that we have. So we're still trying to figure out the alignment.
I got a couple of questions if everybody else is. First of all, nice work so far out there. A lot of progress. It had been a month or so since I've been through there, and I just went through there recently, and it's really a lot of progress being done, so good work.
Building the bridge now. So.
Yeah, and I noticed that the $1 million Taj Mahal burnt palace is now gone too. So
well, not yet. We're in the process of abating asbestos.
That little brick building.
Little brick building. It will be gone hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, good. So the utilities as a major portion of this, Dennis. It's not evident from the work, particularly east of the creek, going back towards 30th Street and down that way. So are they working from the west to the east in terms of the utility?
The first year construction primarily concentrated in Manitou Springs.
Okay.
So we did a lot of water and storm sewer and sanitary work there. We're in the process of CSU is undergrounding the electric now. They're starting to install their infrastructure for that. We're primarily working right now building the bridge and at Ridge Road. There are CSU utilities that are going in up to Ridge. And the emphasis over the next month and a half will be on that. At that point, we have similar infrastructure work that needs to go back to 31st Street. There'll be storm sewers put in, water lines put in, some sanitary connections, and the undergrounding of the electric. So there's a comparable package of work that was done in Manitou last year that needs to be done this year. Unfortunately, it'll probably be, a lot of it will be occurring during the summer tourist season, but unfortunately, not much we can do about that.
Way it goes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, but when the number 10 million kind of comes to mind, that when we were looking ahead at this thing, when we first started, that, as you mentioned, we knew that the project cost was going to increase. And I seem to remember a number of about 10 million or so that may be that number. This is just part of that, what we projected, that we knew were going to be it.
Well, we tried to do our best when we came back in November of 2016. The original budget was about 12 million, and I think we almost had to double that at that point in time. Unfortunately, we were using the cost proposal put in for Wildcat as the construction costs, and I probably should have had a little better foresight and recognized that we didn't have demolition of buildings and other things in there. Some of the items came in after the fact, the water quality pond, the larger water quality pond that we're building. So we didn't include those type things. We didn't know what we needed to do for satisfying the historic elements of the 404 permit. So some of these things we just hadn't included in the cost at that time, and had very little contingency plugged into the program.
Yeah, I was just kind of saying that for the benefit of the new members, that we knew this was going to be increased cost as we were going forward with this thing. So this should not be a surprise. It may be to some of the newer members, but I just wanted to throw that out there just so everybody understood.
And I just want to add, I mean, when we went out knowing that we were not at 100%, we did that deliberately, because when we went out, it was really the best time to contractually get into a contract with a contractor. You wait another 6 months, you're in the middle of the year, everybody's busy, the prices go up. And we also recognize the fact that the prices generally for construction were going up. And so we knew that we made this decision deliberately and discussed it between the entities, and I think that although, you know, we're seeing some of those increased costs, but there's also the benefit of locking in some of those other costs at the lower price, and getting a contractor who is ready and willing and able to schedule for that work in this next 2-year time frame. So I think you know, I never like coming back, especially with a significant project increase, and we didn't like the project increase to begin with. But I think that this is one of those unique projects, and we're going to have other projects that are under budget or over budget, but these are kind of the things that when we came out with the reauthorization for PPRTA, that, you know, when we originally looked at, you know, how do we set those budgets and, you know, percentiles, we recognized that this would happen. So although I'm not happy about coming up here, but that's why we tried to package it all into at least one. And I'm going to tell you that we may be coming back again. But we're trying to be as fiscally as conservative as possible in coming to you with what we know today. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the county? Carlos?
Yeah, and maybe this is premature, but this has to go with the line item transfer for the Mesa Ridge project, and I understand it's, in a sense, you're advancing, the funds are being advanced for next year. Exactly how would you characterize them in next year? I know, is it a handshake deal, or is it a letter or a memorandum of understanding, or how does that exactly work?
It's a handshake deal at this point in time. I think we don't, Mike.
So typically with the RTA, and going back to the beginning, RTA 1, we have it's a cash flow issue, and so in RTA 1, the city, Cam McNair, the city engineer, he would just kind of work, you know, and move yearly budgets, move projects back and forth. And there was also some work that he did with the former county engineer, you know, just kind of swapping or loaning money, or, you know, and then they'd rectify those. So it's just something, because we are kind of a pay-as-you-go. It's kind of typical that we do this. The city had several large projects we started this this second cycle of RTA that had significant cost increases, so we had to push some, out into the future years in order to be able to make the year-to-year budgets work. So I think this is just kind of like Dennis said, it's I would say it's a little more in a handshake.
Yeah,
but
but I'm just, it was just more of a question, and it does make sense that if you have a project like Mesa Ridge that could be deferred just a little bit to get this here because of the priorities, construction budgets, everything else like that. But I understand that there will be some transfers that will need to occur. Things will have to occur in the future. I just wanted to understand, for my benefit, exactly how that's going to work, and if it is a handshake deal, and you just recall or remember when these projects come up among your project engineers, you'll be able to take care of it in the future.
But are you talking about Colorado Springs owing El Paso or the actual line item transfer?
The share, the actual share from Colorado, and again, it may be premature, but I'm actually.
The line item transfer actually goes on the financial statement.
Yeah, any actual
Yeah, but
money.
it has to be paid back. It's like a loan in a sense. Not really.
So in the 2019 budget, say it's over 2 years, that piece of paper that I handed out where the allocations are, I will, I've got this on my radar, I will just take the city's capital allocation and reduce it by how much for that year that's in this memo. If they decide it's 3 years, then divided by a third, and then I'll add it to the counties, and it'll be a line on there. So I'm keeping track of this. It's not a.
And
So those records are in your files, Dan. That's what I wanted to know. Okay.
I want to make sure, too, Jennifer, you can address this. Correct me, but there is an agreement between the entities involved in the overall project, right, Jen?
Well, I guess what I would say is that the RTA is the RTA, and while we have individual allocations, it's different a little bit on the maintenance side than it is on the capital side. I think what we have to recognize is that, this is a total program. It's not the city, it's not the county, it's not Manitou. We all have to be successful in getting all these projects done. So I kind of think of these projects as all of our responsibility. So, Bev will have that in her line. We'll have the record of here. And when Mike doesn't pay me back, I'm going to go beat him up. No, but really, I think we're all responsible for getting all these projects done, because if the city doesn't finish a project or the county doesn't finish a project, we're all not successful. So I think it behooves us, we're working together, and so.
I just want to clarify, I wasn't challenging the need to actually borrow money in the future,
Yeah.
or have to do a line item transfer. I just wanted to make sure, how does this account it? Because it is, in a sense, a future obligation that the city is going to have of $2.7 million, and it sounds like it's really just tracked internally within your spreadsheets, and it'll be taken care of in the next budget cycle.
Right, in the next
And
couple.
I'm not challenging, again, the need to do this.
Okay.
It's just, how is it going to be done? It's a how
And
question.
another thing, though, to keep in mind for the new people on this committee is that all the A projects have to be done for all the entities before we go on to one B project. So even though these allocations are yearly allocations in the budget are based on the decennial census when these were estimated, it really doesn't matter in the end, because if one of the entities has a project that isn't finished and we need all the revenue in the last year for that project and everybody else is done with their projects, then that's where the revenue will go. So it isn't until the B list that it has to be allocated per the census, and that's in the intergovernmental agreements, not in the ballot measure language, like the maintenance allocations are in the ballot measure language. So there's some wiggle room, and like Jennifer said, they're all working together on these joint projects, and really, in the end, on all their projects need to be completed before the B list starts, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's how I like to look at it, and I just say, our relationships with the city and Manitou, they're so important, and we're all a team here, and we all want to get these projects done, so we're all, I kind of take my county hat off when I come to PPRTA, because, this is when one of us is successful, we're all successful here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I just want to thank city staff and City of Manitou staff. They're incredible to work with.
Great, thanks, Jen. Okay, so any other questions for the county and Dennis on, this is the first item, is just on the line item transfer, moving it from Mesa Ridge to West Colorado Avenue.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, Cindy and Reb, for approval, any further discussion? All those in favor of the line item transfer, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 6C, which is the, what is it? 6C. Oh, El Paso County. So this is the other change orders?
I'm assuming it's, I don't have your list, but probably the amendment for FHU would be the next.
There's a couple that aren't related to Colorado.
Colorado Avenue ones first?
Yeah, we do the Colorado Avenue one, so that's, there's a contract amendment proposed for Felsberg, Holton, Olivig, the design team on this project, $1.3 million. And I think I attached a brief description of why those dollars, maybe not so brief, description of why those dollars are required. They've continued to support the project through construction. They've completed the design, reissued, as I said, we issued three different sets of release for construction drawings. They had to be phased to keep ahead of the contractor, so we would work on those areas where the contractor needed to move next while some of the other designs are being finalized. A lot of the changes had to do with in the drainage area. Ran into numerous utility conflicts. We didn't have everything potholed during the design, so assumptions made during the design had to be verified. We had the contractor do a series of potholing. We had to revise some of the major drainage design. We found in some of the private properties that we were impacting that there were drainage that needed to be picked up from there. So a lot of the work that they had to do to complete design was related to that. I also mentioned the historic element that we had to work on. A lot of documentation we had to provide SHPO and the Corps, and so
The rubber tires under historic, or?
well, they became an environmental issue, but it did bring things to construction at a halt at one point. But but those type of things we ran into. But anyway, FHU has continued to work on the project. They haven't billed recently, but they've probably got close to, I think I put $445,000 of costs incurred, which is pending. So that's included in this contract amendment. We would have tried to get this done earlier, but those of you know that Steve Murray had a bad accident back in November and was out for quite a while recovering. And he was the key person putting the information together. So the team continued, but his ability to put the contracting effort together got delayed. So we're bringing it forth here, and I think I outlined that as one of the items in the budget increase. So so if anybody has any questions, I'm probably talking more than you need to know.
I have a question actually on the second one, the TBD for Wildcat Construction. There's a lot of TBDs, and it says 34 new payment items.
I should have. You should have a new one I handed out. At the time we were putting the.
Never mind.
I didn't have the numbers together. But we're trying to cover 4 change orders to Wildcat. So. Okay, and those basically form the new items. The changes in quantity was one, and in that I also included adding more money to the force account because we've used a lot of the force account money to deal with unknowns as we came across the first year of construction. The third one had to do with the demolition of the 2 buildings, one in the city and one in Manitou, and the fourth related to during the design phase and the planning stages, there was a lot of talk about duplicating the fish panel motif along the trail and incorporating those panels, worrying about the final aesthetic of the project. So we decided to incorporate those into into the bridge abutment adjacent to the trail. And it'll have some lights there also. So that's the 4 items there, and I think they total $2.6 something million.
Any further discussion or questions on those 3? We'll work and hear description on the other 2, and then vote on the change order thing all at one time. Okay?
So I talked about, I'm sorry, FHU. I didn't talk about when we awarded the contract to Wildcat, the second, I think there was an item to encumber the 2018 allowance. We did a phased encumbrance of their contract. We had money in 2016. We encumbered some in 2017, and we still owed them money to cover the initial cost of their contract, and that's what that money is there. So.
I think we were warned about that was coming. So. Okay, Jennifer, you want to cover the other 2?
Yeah, and just briefly, we are asking for $235,000, and that's for our annual graveling and chip seal programs. So that is the aggregate that we purchase. Again, that work is done by our staff to actually do the chip seal of the roads and graveling of the roads and maintenance. So that item is only for the material purchase.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? About how many lane miles will that actually cover, 235,000?
I'm trying to remember. We're still taking our final list to our Board of County Commissioners, but typically in 1 year we do between 40 and 50 miles of chip sealing of the roads. So.
There's just curiosity.
Yep. I can come back with the actual numbers, but that's typically what we do. And then the second item is for purchase order for property acquisition specialist. We are designing the intersection of McLaughlin and Meridian roundabout internally, but we do need the assistance of a property acquisition specialist. We have about 15 properties that we need some either right-of-way or easements from. That property acquisition specialist helps us ensure that we follow the Federal Uniform Act. We don't have anybody in-house to do that. So, and it's typical for us to do property acquisition specialists. So, again, we're moving forward and have final design plans for that intersection, and this is the next step to get those right away.
Red?
Does that mean you're paying me, this TRS company, approximately $10,000 per property? Just what does it involve?
So it involves them being the agent. It also involves a subcontractor for the appraisals, and then also costs for the appraisals. That's separate. I'm sorry. It's the property acquisition and then the closings. So then there's costs for the title work and the closings and those. So, and that's an estimate, and we only.
But that
Yep.
does not include the property itself.
Nope, it does not. So just to start off as a good example, a typical appraisal will cost at least $5,000 for each property. So, and that's just for the appraisal, and doesn't include any of the title work and the closing costs and all those items. So believe me, we are getting a good deal on this.
I'm not questioning that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm
Real estate.
yeah. I am.
How big are these properties?
It depends. Some of these are commercial properties. Some of these are small. I mean,
Right.
each individual property is unique. So,
I'm a real estate agent, and I know appraisals are going for about a tenth of that on residential anyway.
sure, residential, but these are appraisals for. Yeah, they have to be eminent domain appraisals. So they're a specific type of appraisal, and so that if we have to get into the eminent domain, and they also follow the Federal Uniform Act for the property acquisition. So there is a higher expectation level for these appraisals. If we were just doing a residential appraisal, it'd be $500 a piece.
Jen, just to be clear, is that where Gizek Motors is, Bartlett Hay and all of that?
Yes, sir.
And there's 10 properties there?
15, approximately.
How big is this roundabout?
Looking at the picture, kind of go,
It's not that big, but there's a lot of small individual properties at that location, and then you have, the legs of the roundabout go into, the adjacent, so.
Oh, the lanes, okay.
Yeah, so it goes Rolling Thunder, Yeah,
I wasn't accounting for the legs, I was just doing the circle.
yep.
All right. Okay, so that completes the change order items that the county has submitted. Are there any further discussion or questions regarding those? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Brad, move approval.
Second.
Ed, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. City of Manitou Springs.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shelley Cobaugh, the Public Services Director for the City of Manitou Springs. That's always a tough act to follow, being behind these guys. I have a smaller request. The City of Manitou Springs has a capital project. It's our transit center at 10 Old Man's Trail, which is at the intersection of Manitou Avenue and Old Man's Trail, and it extends all the way to El Paso to the north. As part of that transit center, we want to improve access for bus riders. So we have been working with Mountain Metro to build a shuttle stop there on the east side of Old Man's Trail, directly adjacent to the Hiawatha Gardens parcel that was acquired with RTA funding. So Mountain Metro is handling all the contracts. They have a contractor, or they're reissuing their contract, I believe, and Brian's shaking his head yes. So they're in the process of reissuing a contract for the contractors that they routinely deal with in building bus stops. So we want to take advantage of the getting things in volume discount, so to speak. So we want to team with Mountain Metro, and we're here to seek your permission that once Mountain Metro has completed this bus stop in Manitou Springs, we want to pay them back for their hard work, and they're estimating that that's going to cost $34,761.90. So we're seeking your permission to use that $34,000 out of one of our capital projects for the Hiawatha Gardens Transit Center to reimburse Mountain Metro.
Any questions for Shelley? Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Joan?
Second.
Tony? Thank you. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shelley.
I have another question real quick for Manitou, just kind of off something else. Manitou did,
David, could you use your mic?
Manitou a couple years ago, I think, did something with their trash service, whatever. I mean, one of the biggest things that tear up roads is trash trucks. I think they put it out for bid to where they only had one trash company that did the service in Manitou. Have you guys seen any benefit to that with the roads and so forth?
So we do have a single hauler ordinance for trash removal, and the winner of the low bid on that is Best Way Disposal. In exchange for their getting a contract with every resident in Manitou Springs, they pay a single hauler fee of $48,000 per year, which we then allocate to various roadway projects or for filling potholes. So they do pay a fee.
Have you seen the roads actually not degrade as fast?
Well, our roads are degrading as fast as they ever have, and possibly worse, because we have some really considerable amount of deferred maintenance. So we've restarted a chip sealing program with our funding through our maintenance work, and we're hoping that our pavement will last longer. But that $48,000, we saved it for 2 years. We had $96,000, which we used last year to repave one of the worst roads that was torn up, and it was a road called Via Vallecito. We used the entire $96,000 2-year allocation to repave a road.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Shelley. Let's move on to item number 7A, transit services. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit with your monthly transit report. For our fixed route services for January of this year, we saw about a 0.5% increase over ridership from January of 2017. for our ADA paratransit services. I'd like you to ignore the numbers that are there because we've been experiencing a very heavy increase in ADA ridership since the middle of last year. So we're looking into our reporting systems, and something's not quite right there. And for January of this year, you can see that we're way high. So we're looking into that, and hopefully next month we'll have that figured out, and we'll have something a little bit more accurate to report. What was your question, Jim?
Two questions on the ADA.
Okay.
On the ADA, the call center TRED software, do you think that might be part of the, or is this a Metro Ride side?
No, this is Metro Mobility, the ADA paratransit service. There could very well be a number of things going on with that, but yeah, it's a little bit more complicated to look into since when this report got out. So I was hoping to have an answer for you today, but we're still looking into it.
On the fixed route service, Brian, I do have a question.
Sure.
It looks like that the service hour, the revenue, the ridership was pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm.
But the service hours were considerably more, but yet the boardings per revenue service hour were down. Is that a function of the increased head time on routes?
Well, yeah, comparing January of this year to January of last year, we had two service changes last spring and last fall where we added service, so we increased revenue service hours, and the numbers of passenger boardings have not quite caught up to have it show as a more efficient service. So hopefully we'll see that the boardings per revenue service hour go up as time goes on.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a good problem that we've been having over the last several years. We've been adding revenue service hours, and while that's good from that perspective, it takes a while for the ridership to build.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. And for our van pool services, we operated 25 van pools in this January, and this is a good trend here. We've been seeing an increase in ridership for van pool services over the last several months, and we're looking strong for January of this year. So that's a good sign. Project update. I reported to you last month that we had our public meetings in January for our spring service change. We had very good attendance, and we're still finalizing our recommendation. We hope to have that out sometime in the middle of this month. But I'll be able to report on that next month at the CAC meeting. And then our quarterly report, I believe, is also attached to this item for the fourth quarter of 2017. And I can take any questions on any of that.
This is a recommendation item, a information-only item. Is there any questions for Brian on the transit? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Item 7B is information only. It's the change order summary report that we talked about several months ago that the county and city are providing us. Are there any comments for either of those folks on any of those change orders? Got off easy, Mike. Thanks for that effort. For both of you. That's it's good to look through that and see some of those. What's going on. That's great. Thanks. Quarterly reports from member governments. Rick's book for the new members, that this may be your first one. This is Rick's survey, or the submissions by the member governments of the status of all of the projects that are going on. This is a great reference document to use for people that may have questions about RTA. A lot of effort goes into doing this, and so if you have any questions about a specific project, this would be a good starting point. All right. Any questions on that? Rick? You heard that Green Mountain Falls bought, oh, it's in there? They did? I guess I'd have to refer to the invoice police for that one, so.
Well, Rick was looking at me.
Yeah.
You know I would.
That's good. We don't have anybody from Green Mountain Falls. I was assuming that's to keep the dust down on the roads.
Right.
So I could certainly ask clarifying questions to see if it's something other than that, but I don't know why they would have a water truck if it was, okay.
All right,
How much was it, Rick?
26,000. All right.
That isn't as much as a pickup.
Used truck.
Used truck, I'm sure. Item 8A, report of recent board actions. Any questions for Rick on that? Results of last month's board meeting? Legislative report.
Okay, the three bills that we've been tracking are Senate Bill 18-088. That's the one to reverse and resolve the recreational marijuana vendor sales tax issue. That one did pass and passed legislature and was signed by the governor's office. So it is law as soon as the bill says it's law. Another bill is House Bill 1119. That one died. I think my memo shows that. So the only remaining one that's pending is Senate Bill 18-001, which is in your packet, and that's the one that is proposing to place a ballot measure to the statewide voters in November of 2018, asking for COPs or RANs, revenue anticipation notes, no new tax increase, but just do some bonding of sorts for transportation that is intended for transportation projects statewide and could help the gap, but we have to be careful, and Representative Terry Carver it's on her radar to try to get an amendment to that, because the way it's worded is it would reverse or kill the last year's 267. I can't remember if it was a House bill or a Senate bill. Does anybody remember? I think it was House Bill 267 that did provide funding for the gap. That's last year. And that the Senate Bill 1 would kill that bill from last year. So there needs to be an amendment that says that it would kill the bill except and carve out that there would be funding kept for a year or two for the gap. So that's the caution flag that's on Senate Bill 18-001.
Was this the one that the lobbyist was talking about, that if this bill passes and kills that funding before the voter-approved project comes out and the ballot fails, we have no funding at all?
Right.
So the timing of these two create an issue.
Mr. Chair. So I see on that staff is recommending a monitor position. It seems like if that's the case, we might want the lobbyist to actually have a position.
Actually, on the PPACG side of the House, there is active discussion with Representative Terry Carver relative to an amendment. So I feel confident that with the PPACG lobbyist and the discussions I've sat in where Representative Carver was talking to the PPACG Legislative Committee and the PPACG lobbyist, I'm confident that the pursuit of that amendment is adequately being addressed on the PPACG side of the House. But if you want to propose something to supplement that, that's fine.
Commissioner Waller was all over this at the board meeting last month, and our lobbyist was there, and they kind of talked about this last month at the board meeting. So I feel like they're monitoring it right now and are poised to pounce if they need to, would be my assessment of what I heard.
Right. Well, if we're going to make a recommendation, Mr. Chair, I would certainly say that if they're poised to pounce, we recommend that they do so if they see the need, rather than just sit back and watch.
We can do this either way. We can take a vote for the committee that we recommend to the board that they monitor this very closely and pounce if they need to. We can make it formal, or somebody can propose some wording, or I will give you my word. That's what I do next Wednesday at the board meeting. However,
Let me just ask a question. So what are the options here? We have monitor. What are the other options that we would have other than just monitoring this bill that's before the Senate?
A recommendation that the board take some action.
In other words, to go ahead and make this amendment. So you're talking, and when you're referring to the lease purchase agreement, right? That amendment that would actually carve out, that would actually continue those COPs, is my understanding. Those would actually continue specifically for the I-25 GAP project. Is that the amendment?
Yes.
So that lease purchase would still, so it wouldn't be the entire lease purchase program goes away. That would still be, you would still need to carve out a certain amount of money, well, I was to say a certain amount of those lease purchase agreements to cover the GAP funding. Is that correct?
Yes, $250 million is what CDOT has pledged to the GAP out of the last year's money, $250 million.
And that comes out of that lease purchase
Yes.
agreement. Okay.
Question. Rick, why should we recommend anything? To me, we've already approved the hiring of lobbyists, okay?
Yes.
And we are not in a position to suggest they pounce until they suggest that they do something. They should do it without our approval, I think.
Well, and I've been relying on the PPCG side of the House and Commissioner Mark Waller's on that board as well. So,
Well, not just that, there are two different lobbyists.
yes,
And,
yes. But,
they're both monitoring.
yeah, and I think.
but if the PPRTA CAC wants to recommend the PPRTA board to give some direction to the hired lobbyist, that's the action that we would need from you today. But what I'm saying is that Commissioner Waller's on both boards, Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf is on both boards. A number of people are monitoring this, and when I had my PPCG hat on, interim executive director, I sat in on the PPCG legislative committee meetings where Terry Carver was on the phone and the PPCG lobbyist was on the phone, and everybody was pledged to work toward the amendment so that the 2018 legislation didn't kill the 2017 $250 million for the GAP.
Could I make a suggestion? Is that what if I propose this from the committee that as a chair briefing the board next week is that I'm comfortable that we have members of the board and others that are all over this thing, and we're not monitoring on a day-to-day basis, and we have two lobbyists between PPACG and here. What if I just suggest that we support the board's decision to stay on top of this and keep monitoring it, and that we, particularly as it pertains to the I-25 GAP funding? Would that be okay?
Yes.
And don't get into this whole recommendation thing, or because there's a bigger piece of this that we're not aware of unless you are actually tracking legislation on a real personal basis. But I feel comfortable based on sitting at the board meetings and hearing the lobbyists that they're all over this thing.
Mr. Chair, I will say that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I just want to make sure that we're not saying that it's our recommendation that they just sit and watch.
Oh, yeah.
That was really my my concern there.
Point taken. Yeah, good. Okay.
We are
Say again?
proactive.
Act is needed. Yeah, we support act is needed. Yes. Okay, is that all right with everybody? Okay. All right.
Should we move for that recommendation, or are we not going to do that?
He's just
then?
going to
You're
do
just
his
gonna, okay.
part of his report.
I will move that we recommend to continue to monitor this particular project, and that we would, it has a recommendation, do we need to take a vote on this? It's listed as a recommendation.
It's, I put it on as, so you don't have to amend your agenda from info to recommendation. I put in the higher element. You can always
Okay.
you can always do less.
Okay. Why don't I'll just speak to it as we suggested, and we won't need to make a formal recommendation. Is that sufficient with everybody? Okay. All right. Any agenda items for the next meeting? Reb?
We have a meeting scheduled for July the 4th. We got.
Thank you.
Good lead-in.
You stole my segue.
You didn't get the memo.
So,
See it on there.
well, go ahead and finish your sentence.
Why, you're going to steal my thunder. Go for it. I'm in favor of any way anybody decides, period.
Oh, okay.
After he decides what he's going to say about it.
So we have, for July 4 is a holiday for lots of people, including the people in this building. So that's the first Wednesday. So unless you want to move to continue having, you could be here because you aren't going to be working. So the three options instead of Wednesday, July 4 are Tuesday morning and Thursday morning and afternoon, not Tuesday afternoon.
I would move, because of PPRTA, the CAC meeting on the 3rd, if we could meet at our usual 1:30 time on the 5th of July.
The afternoon, this room's already taken the afternoon.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
On
misunderstood.
Thursday?
She said Thursday.
She said the 5th.
Oh, did you?
Well, she started to say Tuesday, and then she said.
Oh,
The 5th,
oh, okay.
Thursday the 5th,
Is open.
in the afternoon at 1:30.
Yes, sorry.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Do we have a show of hands to see if we have a quorum for Thursday afternoon, the 5th at 1:30?
May not be in town. We're traveling.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's pretty close. So I'll gamble with that.
Will you be back for the church?
So Thursday, the 5th at 1:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You got it? You got it
I
covered?
got it. Yep.
All right. Anything else under communications? I will not be here next month for the meeting, so we're going to be in California for a trip that we planned over a year ago, so I will not be here for the board meeting or the CAC meeting in April.
Rick, heads up. I will be here for the board meeting, but not for the CAC meeting, but not the board meeting.
In July?
No, next month.
Oh, next month.
I am leaving this country April the 5th, providing I can re-enter the country. I will be back sometime around the 16th or 17th. I didn't say what I was going to do out of country, did I?
Speak a little louder so that the people monitoring can catch the name and the date.
Yeah.
It was April the 5th, and it's, my name is,
Jose Ivan.
Jim Godfrey.
Yeah.
my name's Godfrey.
Neither the chair and vice chair, first vice chair are going to be at the April board meeting? Is that what?
I will not be at either.
I will not be at the board meeting.
Okay, I can give the committee report.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And we'll have to check. We'll have to check to make sure Tom's available. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one thing. Communication. Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. I just wanted to mention the county commissioners are hosting a second meeting in regards to I-25 this Saturday at 10 a.m. at Centennial Hall. So if you're interested, you are invited to come. It's a public hearing.
Auditorium.
Yeah, the auditorium in this commissioners conference.
Which time?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Centennial Hall, I-25.
And Mr. Chair, I just had also an announcement, but
Okay, just a minute, Carlos. Rick, did you have something?
I just wanted to ask, this is the first I heard about Steve's accident. Is he okay? I mean,
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either.
Yeah.
Had a severe break of his foot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Several surgeries on it.
Okay, thank you. Carlos?
yeah, this is just a general announcement. As you know, the Downtown Partnership is putting on some what's called the City Center Series. We're going to be having in town on April the 3rd, Charles Marone of Strong Towns. You may have heard of him. He's actually with the Strong Towns kind of movement, and he refers to himself as a recovering transportation engineer. But he's actually a very interesting, you may have actually read about some of his work in like American Conservative magazine and so forth. But he actually, he's going to talk about how we can actually work on, how we can actually build resiliency in our communities and transportation systems with very limited budgets. He's a very interesting person, highly recommended person, since he actually, his expertise is in transportation and building, as they call strong towns. Definitely worth it. This is on April 3rd.
Thank you. Rick, do you want to say anything about Kono retirement for Dave Munger?
oh, thank you. Yes, on March 14th, we'll be holding a retirement party for Dave Munger. Everybody is available. It'll be at the
Heinrich?
Penrose Room.
Oh, Penrose Room.
It's Broadmoor.
Penrose House, yes.
Yeah, and it will be from 5:30 to 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Right.
And everybody's welcome, and please come down.
For those that don't know Dave Munger, he's been very active in this community for a long, long time, from the Downtown Partnership to the passing of RTA to, and been the president or chair of Kono for the Council of Neighborhood Organizations. He's been very active in the Citizens College for El Paso County, very active in the community. Dave has done a lot for this community over the years. So just a opportunity to pay respect to a guy who's really done a lot for this city and county. So if there's no further actions, we're adjourned. Thank you. I can't go that, we've got the last night of our Broadway series at the Performing Arts Theaters that night.
The Broadway series.
It's a Broadway series, down at Pikes Peak Center.
Oh, okay.
The musicals and plays and stuff. And then our last performance of the season is that night.
I didn't know you do that stuff too. Is there anything you don't do?
Don't go to symphony. Don't do symphony.
I'd rather do the symphony than the opera.
Well, not the operas. These are plays and musicals, not necessarily the. I did the pop song for 1 year. That was too boring. I couldn't do
Stood up and said, shut up. She said, shut up.
Yes, sir.
That's fun.
Yes. And I know
No, actually, Vanderwerf had a ton of questions of the CDOT guys last month.
I cleared those out and I said, you guys need to fix it, they got a draft back to me. I just wanted to make sure that it was,
Service level, the definition of number of traffic from the green to the red. I charge. Yeah, Yeah, that was brought up, that there was no issue. And that we're paying $350 for 3